Hello, good day, good humans of YouTube. I hope you guys are doing well today. My name is Bianca. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, welcome back. Today we'll be talking about a true crime story, an exoneration to be exact, and I will be doing my makeup for you guys. So come on in. If you like makeup, if you like watching people do their makeup, if you like hearing true crime stories, if you like happy endings, that's the type of content you'll find on my channel. Today you guys are gonna get ready with me. I'm getting ready for a Friendsgiving. Actually, I think my next few videos I'll be getting ready for like Friendsgiving or Thanksgiving. It's that time of the year. I've been invited to several and I feel super thankful that I have a lot of friends and just have like plans for the next few weekends to be around people in such good spirit. Other than that, I won't take up too much of your time. We can hop right into the story. Side note, I have some lip gloss on because I live in the Midwest and it's brittle and cold and my skin and my hair, it needs some little extra love. Without further ado, let's go. Today we will be talking about two men out of, well, they're actually from Mexico, but they were living in Chicago. Their names are Gabriel Solache and Arturo DeLeon Reyes. It all starts on March 28th, 1998, when a couple by the name of Jacinta and Mariano Soto were attacked in their home on the north side of Chicago in a neighborhood called Humboldt Park. Somebody approached their home. The way the events took place is that somebody, rang the doorbell. Jacinta, the wife, goes and answers the door and is instantly attacked, stabbed with a knife over 20 times without being able to make a sound. So her husband, Mariano, he really didn't know that this was happening. Like it was in the middle of the night and it happened pretty much like extremely fast. He was actually in the bed with his 2-year-old son, with their 2-year-old son. The couple had recently given birth to a beautiful baby girl. So in the house, it was Jacinta, the mom, Mariano, the husband, their baby girl, Maria Guadalupe, who was actually only 2 months old, as well as their 3-year-old son, Santiago. After Jacinta was attacked, the perpetrator then moves into the bedroom and murders her husband, Mariano, while he sleeps in his bed, right next to his 3-year-old son, which is just like sick. You kill a man in front of a baby boy. After committing the murder, the perpetrator then takes the children, takes the 2-month-old baby girl, takes 3-year-old Santiago, and kidnaps them and leaves. Jacinta was stabbed 20 times, and Mariano, the dad, was stabbed 39 times. Later that same day, 23-year-old Adriana Meja was at home with her family, and she started complaining about stomach pains and feeling like she was in labor. The woman had been pregnant, had been expecting her own child, and so it was no shock to the family when she started experiencing these symptoms. So Adriana is like, all right, I'm gonna go to the hospital. She tells her husband and her other family members that there's no need for anybody to come with her to the hospital. She's just gonna go really quick, pop the baby out, she'll be back. So she leaves, goes to the hospital, and the very next day she returns with a beautiful baby girl. And oddly enough, she has a young boy with her. When asked about this child, like who is this and where did they come from, Adriana said that there was a woman who was in labor and preparing to give birth, and she had her 3-year-old son, but she didn't have anybody there to watch him. So Adriana volunteered out of the kindness of her heart. She saw another mother struggling to keep up, and she said, hey, you know what, I'll watch him for you. And then she took him home to watch him while she gave birth to her new baby. Likely story. Now, when Adriana returned home, she lived in like an apartment building, right? But actually a lot of her family members also lived there. So she had her husband as well as her sister. Her sister's husband lived there, as well as just like some other families. It was kind of like just a big apartment complex. Ooh, okay, I got some mansion eyebrows, kind of. When Adriana returns with the baby, she returns back to this house where her whole entire family is, and everybody is overjoyed. Everybody's so happy for her because Adriana had been trying to get pregnant for a while. She had wanted a baby desperately, her and her husband, and so when they successfully give birth, I mean, everybody's ecstatic, especially Adriana's husband. Rosario and Adriana had spent about 3 years just trying to conceive, you know, doing everything they could to produce a baby of their own. And they weren't having much luck. So when, you know, Adriana comes home with their baby girl, they're ecstatic. The whole family is happy for them because everybody knows how difficult of a journey this has been for them. And everybody wanted them to have their family. So there were about 9 people who lived in this apartment complex. And of that were Gabriel Solache and Arturo DeLeon Reyes, who we were talking about today. Gabriel was 23 years old and Arturo was 25. So everybody's kind of staying in the house, helping out with the baby. Everybody's happy. They go on like this for about 3 days until April 1st, when the bodies of the Soto family were discovered in their home. Upon discovering the bodies, police are kind of investigating the spot and they see family pictures all over the place, and they realize that this isn't the whole family. Like, there's 2 more members of this family that are not here at this crime scene. And so upon evaluating all the photos, they notice that baby girl has a wine-colored birthmark on her neck. The police instantly release photos of the young boy, Santiago, to the press. They're telling everybody, we're looking for these 2 children. They're victims of a kidnapping. If you see or notice anything, contact authorities right away. One of the members of the family, Guadalupe, sees this on the news and recognizes the boy right away as Santiago. She's like, I know him. He's been living here for the past 3 days. Now, in her mind, she's like, oh no, like the woman who was at the hospital, who was giving birth, who gave this child to Adriana, probably committed these murders and then went to go have, you know, went to the hospital and did whatever. Like, I gotta report this, like, let the police know about this woman who stole this boy, took him to the hospital, and now we have him. Like, so she goes to Adriana and she's like, hey girl, I don't know if you saw the news, but that woman who gave you this boy, like, she's involved in some serious shit. And he has been kidnapped. We need to return him. Like, she's like, you know, we need to go to the police. You need to tell them everything about this woman who gave you this 3-year-old child and what she looked like so that they can go get her because she kidnapped him. And she possibly had something to do with these murders. That's all that Guadalupe was thinking. It did not cross her mind for a moment that Adriana stole these children or that she had anything to do with the crime. Now, when Rosario, Adriana's husband, came home thinking that this is his baby girl and that this boy was just somebody that she found at the hospital. So when he gets home, he's immediately like, we need to take this boy to the police, right? Still under no suspicion or impression that Adriana had anything to do with the murder. They were just like, the boy's missing. This is the boy on the TV. Like, we need to take him to the police and tell them that he's here and where we got him and where they can find the lady who kidnapped him. Adriana was like, no, we shouldn't take him to the police. We should just abandon him in an alley. That's what she told them. And they're kind of sitting there like, huh? Why would you suggest that we leave a young child in an alley, a 3-year-old? What are you talking about? Like, we're gonna take him to the police. They argued for about 45 minutes, and that's when Gabriel came home from his position as a machine operator. So he gets home roughly about 2:30 a.m. Rosario, the husband, he's like, we gotta take this young child to the police station. I need somebody to go with me. My wife is freaking out. She wants to leave the boy in an abandoned alley for whatever reason. I don't know. Nobody thought this was like suspicious behavior. But Rosario, the husband, he's like, all right, she's gonna stay here with the baby. We're gonna take the boy. He asked Gabriel and Arturo to accompany him to the police station to take the boy in. And they're like, yeah, man, we'll go with you. Like, sure, no problem. So the three men get in the car with the young boy. They take him to the police station. They're like, hey, we got this kid. It's the one on the news. We're just trying to return him to you, help you out with whatever you're looking for. They place the three men in 3 separate interrogation rooms. So we have Rosauro, the husband of Adriana. We have Gabriel, who just was one of the residents in the house, a family member. And we have Arturo, who was another resident in the house, another family member. They place them in the interrogation room, and the men have to wait about 2 hours before they can get a Spanish-speaking officer to come to the station, because none of the men spoke English or understood it, and so they were obviously not able to communicate like what was going on. So just imagine these 3 men show up with this boy and can't explain like where he came from. They can't let the officers know what happened because there's a language barrier there. While the men were waiting in the interrogation room, the police contacted a neighbor of the Soto family who came and was able to identify the boy as Santiago, the son. The police then go to Rosauro's home, where they find his wife, Adriana, rocking the baby. Police look at the baby, they evaluate her condition, and they recognize a wine-colored birthmark on the baby's neck. And they immediately realize that this is the daughter of the Soto family who had been kidnapped. Adriana was taken to the station, where she was put in an interrogation room. About 2 days later, after 40 hours of interrogation, police announced that Adriana, Gabriel Solache, and Arturo DeLeon Reyes had all 3 confessed to the murders of the Soto family, as well as the kidnapping of 2-month-old Maria Guadalupe and 3-year-old Santiago. Police announced that Adriana wanted a child so badly, she was even willing to commit these murders and abduct the baby for herself and for her family. It was said that she had paid Gabriel and Arturo $600 apiece to murder the parents of the 2 children and abduct the 2 children and bring them home for her and her husband to raise as their own. According to Adriana, this is what took place on the day of the murders. In March of 1998, Arturo and Gabriel were, living in the same residence as Adriana and her husband. On Thursday, March 26th, Adriana says that she told Arturo that she had found a friend who had a very pretty baby. So on the early morning of March 28th, the day that these murders take place, Adriana wakes up. She's feeling like she's going into labor. She has Arturo take her to the hospital. He drops her off at the hospital under the pretext that she was about to give birth. So when he goes to pick her up, he has now scooped up Gabriel. The 3 of them leave the hospital and they head to the Soto's residence. While they were on the way there, Adriana says that she told Arturo that his assignment was to go to the crib and pick up the baby. Gabriel's assignment was to go and handle Mr. Soto, and that Adriana would go and she would take care of Mrs. Soto. She says that upon walking up to the door, ringing the bell, Jacinta, the mom, comes to the door. Adriana starts begging her to please let her in, claiming that she had nowhere else to go. She allows the 3 of them into her home, where Arturo begins to stab her and then runs to the baby's bedroom to scoop up the 2-month-old. He also grabbed the 3-year-old boy who was laying in bed with his father and took the 2 children out to the car. Meanwhile, Gabriel picks up a kitchen knife from where they're standing and heads into Dad's room, where Dad had been laying in the bed, and he attacks Mariano. It's said that Gabriel stabbed the man a bunch of times and then immediately ran out and just dropped the knife outside the bedroom and just took off running. While Arturo was running out of the house with the children, he looked back and saw Adriana stabbing Jacinta in the back like an animal, just cruel and viciously with no remorse. Like she was angry, as if Jacinta had stole the baby from her. They ain't got nothing else. They got the audacity, I'll tell you. So Arturo takes the babies to the car. Gabriel and Adriana come running out of the house and they take off in the vehicle. It's said that the two men drop Adriana and the two children off at the hospital, and then Gabriel and Arturo make their way back to their house. Later that morning, on the same morning of March 28th, Adriana calls up her husband, Rosardo. He's thinking that she had just given birth to their baby, so he comes to pick her up from the hospital. And this is when she gets in the car with baby Maria and Santiago, the 3-year-old. And that's when Adriana tells the story about how this woman was going into labor and asked her to watch her son, and that's how she ended up with this 3-year-old boy. Police said that Adriana admitted that she had actually faked being pregnant for 9 months to her husband. Everybody was under the impression that she was in labor, like she had been pregnant for this whole time and she was experiencing labor. She was getting ready to go to the hospital to bring home their baby that they had tried so hard to have for 3 years. But the whole entire time, Adriana was faking all of her symptoms. She was just lying about doctor's appointments and everything that had to do with being pregnant and preparing for a child. As her due date approached, Adriana had been at a medical facility where she spotted a couple and their newborn baby. Adriana followed them home, kind of observed their situation, noticed that the baby was particularly small, and had pretty much decided at that moment that that was her baby now. Now, Rosardo, Adriana's husband, was held at the station for 2 days, just like everybody else, but police ultimately determined that he didn't know anything about what's going on. He thought this whole entire time that his wife was pregnant, and he was devastated in realizing that not only did she set up these people to be murdered, but he's also not a father. This baby is not his baby. And so they release him with no charges. However, Adriana, Arturo, and Gabriel are all arrested and held without bond. The two men were tried separately, but everything pretty much happened the same in the same timelines. All 3 defendants in this case were charged with murder, aggravated kidnapping, and home invasion. Before the trial began, Gabriel and Arturo both motioned for a move to suppress their confessions on the grounds that they were actually coerced. Gabriel claimed that he was Mexican, he was from Mexico, he did not speak English, and the detective that they waited 2 hours for to show up was from Puerto Rico. And if you are not familiar with the Spanish language, the Spanish is different when it's in different natives. So if Mexican Spanish and Puerto Rican Spanish are not necessarily the same. And that caused a language barrier between what he was understanding to happen. And he didn't fully understand what this officer was trying to tell him. He didn't understand what he was confessing to. He wasn't sure what was going on all around. He was not speaking the same language as anybody in the vicinity, and he was very confused. He also alleged that the officer slapped him so hard that he chipped his tooth. It was said that he was hit so hard that he lost hearing in his left ear. Just like Gabriel, Arturo kind of said the same thing, he was Mexican, he didn't speak the same type of Spanish. He also didn't speak English. He couldn't read, write, or speak English, so he didn't know anything about what these people were saying to him or what they were talking about. He went on to say that his confession was a direct result of physical, mental, and psychological coercion. Both the men stated that several times when asked why they did what they did, why they hurt these people, every time that denied the allegations, they would be hit by the police, specifically Officer Guevara. They were both threatened with the electric chair, that they were going to get the death penalty if they didn't confess. And they're only understanding these things halfway, these threats, right? They're understanding certain words like death penalty and electric chair, but not getting the full context of what is going on. Now, as far as the evidence goes, they were able to recover several items from the scene, as well as items from the household. An Illinois State Police DNA analyst was able to perform DNA testing on Adriana's shoes, her pants, a towel that was found in Adriana's vehicle. She also was able to conduct DNA testing on 2 knives, a towel, a baby blanket, and baby clothing that was recovered from the scene. The specialist testified that Adriana's blood was found on one of the knives that was recovered from the scene, as well as the towel that was found in her car. In addition, the blood from the father, Mariano Soto, was found on Adriana's shoes and her pants that they recovered from her apartment. They had found a male's DNA present on the same towel that Adriana's blood was found on from her car. The profile of the blood or the DNA was not linked to any of the men that were involved in the case. So it wasn't linked to the dad. It wasn't linked to any of the gentlemen that were being charged. Nothing else from the crime scene, nothing else from the car, the apartment had any DNA that connected Arturo or Gabriel to the crime at all. Their DNA wasn't found anywhere on anything that had anything to do with the crime. And because of that, the prosecution's case rested heavily on these men, on their confession, because they had no physical evidence to tie them to the crime. So upon the men coming forward and saying that their confession wasn't even real evidence because it was coerced out of them, that makes the prosecution's case very difficult. The men testified at their trial stating that they both spoke English, and when they brought in this officer who spoke Spanish, he would ask them questions and they would respond in Spanish, and then he would then turn and translate in English. But there was really no way of telling if what he was translating was accurate, if it was what they were saying, or if he was telling a completely made up lie. You know, if the men tell him, no, I had nothing to do with this, and then he turns and tells them he just confessed. He said that, you know, they pulled up to their house and stabbed them. There was really no way to monitor that. Like, there was no additional Spanish-speaking people around who could verify if the translation was accurate. And so this is where the men say that their confession came from. Like, despite being beaten and wanting the beatings to stop, they also believe that they were mistranslated to the lawyers and the police and the investigators in the interrogation. The defense also pointed out that the men's confession did not match the story of what happened. For instance, Gabriel said that Mariano, the dad, was murdered after he opened the door for the 3 of them to come in, and that Jacinta, the mother, was killed in her bed, when in fact the crime happened the opposite way. Like, Jacinta, the mom, was the one who had answered the door and whose body was found right in front of the door, and the father was still left in the bed. So if Gabriel committed the murders, why would he get their locations or the story, like the complete vision of the story, incorrect? The men stated that when they signed the written confession, they had no idea what it said. Period. Like, they did not know what it said. Now, remember I told you that Solache said that upon being abused in the interrogation room, he stated that he had lost hearing in his left ear. Gabriel had been in a car accident just a couple years before this incident took place. And so the prosecution team was like, well, he could have, lost his hearing then in that car accident. And they had called a physician to testify and say that it was a possibility that is something that could have happened. Gabriel's defense team also had an audiologist perform 2 hearing tests on him in July and August of 1998. And both tests determined that he had profound loss of hearing in his left ear, and actually began using a hearing aid from that point forward. He stated that before he was arrested, he could hear out of his left ear, and after, he cannot hear a single sound without his hearing aid. He was completely deaf in one ear. Gabriel also went on to say that his accident was from 1997, and from that time until the day he was arrested, he could hear perfectly fine out of his ear. He never had hearing issues until after he went to the station with these officers. Now, Rosardo, who was Adriana's husband, who had been dismissed of all the charges once they realized that he was just an innocent bystander and really had no idea about all of these things that were going on, he actually came and testified on behalf of the men, stating that he too was beaten and abused in the time that he was in the interrogation room that they also tried to coerce a confession out of him, until they realized when they told him that she had been faking the pregnancy the whole time, that he really was not in the loop and that he really had no idea about any of these things that were happening. But up until that point, they had also been beating him. They had also threatened him with the electric chair when he, stated that he had no idea about any of these things. They told him he was lying, they hit him, they slapped him around, they did all the things. He also stated that he also did not speak English and was also not sure if he was being correctly translated to the detectives and to the lawyers. The men claimed that they were beaten, they were sleep deprived, they weren't allowed to eat or use the restroom or speak with any counsel from Mexico. On June 20th, 2000, both the men in completely separate trials were both found guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and home invasion. While Arturo received life in prison without parole, Gabriel received the death penalty. After their conviction in March 7th of 2001, Adriana pled guilty to all of the charges and received life in prison without parole. The men initially tried to, appeal the ruling. However, the judge straight up told them that he doesn't believe anything they say, and he didn't believe them during the proceedings and he doesn't believe them now, and so no. Which is just like, why? In 2003, the death penalty was vacated in the state of Illinois, and the governor, George Ryan, commuted all of the sentences of the inmates who were awaiting death into life sentences without the possibility of parole. And because he was no longer serving a death sentence, Gabriel's case was transferred from the Supreme Court to the appellate court. However, they upheld his conviction. In 2006, they actually reversed the dismissal of the appeals and demanded that the case be heard by a different judge. They were to focus on not whether or not the men were guilty of the crime, but whether or not they were coerced into confessing. 11 years of legal proceedings followed that decision. During that time, the Chicago police were exposed for a number of coercions and police misconduct associated with the officers that were directly involved in this case. Specifically, Guevara that we spoke about earlier, he was later implicated on nearly 51 cases of extracting a confession via coercion. In 2016, Judge James Abish declined to vacate their convictions. However, they were entitled to a hearing to determine whether or not they were coerced into confessing. By the time Detective Guevara was called in 2017 as a witness to the hearing, 6 men had been exonerated of murder charges that were falsely coerced out of them due to the physical violence that this detective inflicted on them. Guevara took the stand in these men's cases and denied allegations that he had coerced anything or inflicted any violence, or just denied everything. He's like, what? I don't know what they're talking about. The next month, in November 2017, another man was exonerated under the same pretenses. So in October 16, the 6 men who were exonerated, their names were Juan Johnson, Jaques Rivera, Armando Serrano, Jose Montanez, William Negron, Roberto Almodovar. The 7th man the next month was Jose Maisonet. And just listen how this list just goes on. It continues. Just wait. In January of 2018, Thomas Sierra became the 10th person exonerated due to this. In February, Ariel Gomez became the 11th person. In March, Ricardo Rodriguez became the 12th person. In June, Roberto Bauto became the 13th person. In January of 2019, Geraldo Iglesias became the 14th person. In December of 2019, Demetrius Johnson became the 15th person, not including in December of 2017 when Gabriel and Arturo were dismissed, and they would have been the 16th and 17th victims of this injustice. However, the good old US, they're not good with being called out on their shit. And so instead of just releasing these men into society, they called immigration and had them deported on December 21st of 2017 after spending 20 years in prison for wrongfully being convicted of a murder and for being coerced into confessing wrongfully by the officers of the United States. They were deported back to Mexico. Such a shame. Such a shame. That's all I have to say about that. In March of 2018, Gabriel filed a civil rights lawsuit seeking compensation for damages done by the Chicago Police Department, the United States government. And on June 29th, 2018, shout out, that's my birthday, my man's got his coin, okay? He was paid. I'm trying to think of, June 29th is actually my birthday. And it's like, oh, that's what's up, that he got like his payment, his compensation. I mean, obviously it sucks that this whole situation went the way that it did, but I love that he got his coin on my birthday. That just makes me feel like that's a good day to get paid. I'm trying to think of where I was in 2018 for my birthday. Maybe I was in New Orleans, maybe I was in LA. I can really only remember my birthday from this year and last year, and before that I pretty much can't remember anything that happened in the world. What do you guys think? As a person of color, you want to be refreshed by the presence of somebody who looks like you. I guess that's not really the way it works when we talk about police, but I'm sure that they were relieved when they saw this officer come in who spoke Spanish, who looked like them, and then just to have him be like so corrupt and so awful that when he walked in, all he saw was his next two victims. Adriana is still serving life in prison. She obviously will probably never get out. And at first, I felt kind of like bad for her, right? Because I'm like, dang, she really wants to have a baby. Like, in my mind, I was like, okay, what if she was sick? When I was first reading through this, I'm like, okay, maybe she thought that she was actually pregnant. You know, where they have that like syndrome where their body can mimic side effects or mimic a pregnancy. But homegirl was not sick. She was not confused. She did not think that she was pregnant. She knew the whole time that she wasn't pregnant, and she just lied to her family, to her husband, made him think that he was about to be a father, and then went on to commit murders, and then allowed two other men to take the blame for those murders. Like, that is some seriously like disturbing thought process for somebody to do. I'm sure a lot of, and this is me wanting to give her like some grace, right? I think that maybe on some level she also doesn't, speak English, and so coming up with that story about how the men were involved in the crime was probably a direct result of the language barrier between her and the officers and the detectives. At least that's what I'm choosing to believe, because it's just too sad to think that somebody would just allow so many people to be affected. And I think that's like one thing that I'm realizing about all these cases is it's just like it's never simple, right? Not only are the crimes complex, but from the moment that people are taken down to the station, there's so many people who are involved in the process that starts and ends with them being convicted of these crimes. So many times it comes down to the lack of defense, because a lot of these crimes, like this one for instance, right? They found DNA all over the crime scene. They found DNA all over the apartment where all of these people lived, but none of it was linked to the men who were being charged with these crimes. And I'm not like a lawyer, and I'm by no means bashing anybody's skill, but that seems like a pretty defendable case. This man lost his hearing. You guys have proof of that. You have the person who they found to be innocent come in and also testify that he was also abused, right? We have proof of that. You found DNA all over the crime scene that none of which was tied to either defendants, but the weapon that was used had DNA that belonged to Adriana. All signs point to this woman who desperately wanted the baby. I think that the only thing that maybe people would have had a hard time swallowing, as far as as far as that story goes, is that like how this one woman was able to murder 2 people. But it doesn't sound that crazy given that the husband was asleep and the mother was murdered before even being able to make a sound or set off an alarm of any sort. Okay, this is my finished look. We can talk about it in just a second, but how do you guys, why is there always like a difficult hair? Okay. How do you guys feel about this story? There's just a lot of sad parts to it. Rest in peace to the Soto family. It's so sad what happened to them. Such a brutal way to go. I can't imagine. I'm sure they were very concerned about their children right before it happened. Also, like, it's so shitty, you know, that these men served 20 years for being wrongfully convicted and being abused into a confession. And then when they finally get their freedom back, they're deported back to Mexico as if the United States didn't owe them time and freedom. As if they didn't, that wasn't owed to them. Like, they deserved that because it was theirs. That was stolen from them. Sure, they were here illegally, okay. But they didn't do anything wrong. Like, they didn't actually commit these crimes. I feel like that was just like a power move. They had to exonerate 17 people. That is just mind-blowing to me. Anyways, I'm about to get dressed and get ready to go to this Friendsgiving. I hope you guys like the look. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Thank you guys for watching my video. Louie wanted to say hi and happy holidays to you guys. Be still. Stop it. Other than that, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Tune in next week. These videos, I plan to have them uploaded every Wednesday. So catch another one next week. If you haven't watched my other ones, I will link them in this video. Other than that, take care of yourself, love one another, and I will see you next time. Peace.